Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this, right? The question that arises, where do we go from here? Now, if anyone is wondering why I have this on, it's Ramadan. For those who understand the lingo, you know, around this time you should be, from a non-Muslim perspective. So let me say that, from a non-Muslim perspective, Ramadan is a time of cleansing. So, although I may not claim Muslim, although Islam, something different, we're not getting into any of that. So this is why I have this on for those who may, this has nothing to do with gangs and all that. So just to make that clear. So the wrong intentions are not set up. Everything is symbolic. Everything is symbolic. If you don't know that, then other people know that. This is also why I have the crown on. Has nothing to do with theatrics. Has nothing to do with the appearance. It's all symbolic. What do I mean? I asked a 5-year-old what this is. Their response was a castle. So I got to thinking, so this is a castle to a 5-year-old, right? They don't know the word crown and what it represents. They don't know all the exclusive details. You know what I mean? What kingdom, what emblems, what jewels are in the crown, so on and so forth. But they equate it with a castle. So when you know what the symbolism of a castle is, which is Moorish science, for those who don't know, then you understand what this really represents. And of course, I'm just not revealing this information. I've been wearing the crown for who knows how long, but I'm just finally revealing that it's deeper than just some YouTube theatrics for those who may not understand. Everything is symbolic. But let's get to the purpose of the video because we're not going to be here too long. Where do we go from here? Hopefully, hopefully, I say hopefully and I say respectfully, those who were meant to receive the downloads have received them by now. So we can move on from trying to wake people up. If you are not awakened by now, it's just not going to happen for you. Why do I say that? All the information that has been released before 2012, during 2012, and after 2012, all of the information that has been released, if in your mind you think for a second that people need more to wake up, people need more information, people need more books, people need more scholarship, then you're not in reality. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Those of us who did receive the calling, we received it because we were pre-programmed, pre-configured to respond to certain stimulation when it comes within our atmosphere. So when you received, when you heard, when you begin to listen, then things started to make more sense to you. When your intuition became louder than the five senses, that's when reality started to awaken right before your eyes. So those of us who have received were pre-meditated to awaken at this particular time. This is how the world is set up. There will never be those who don't have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. There will always be those who preserve the proper culture. Simple. It don't matter what's going on in the world. There will always be the Jedi. There will always be the Sith Lords. Just for the Star Wars lingo for those who can catch that. That dynamic will always be the law of polarity. If we want to take it back to Hermeticism, these things will always be in play. So let's not get confused. So for anyone who's still walking around this planet unaware and oblivious, it's because they choose to. Because there's too much information out here, physically and on the internet, for those to not be attuned to what's really transpiring, unless they choose to ignore it. We, on the other hand, had no choice. This is the difference between trying to wake up somebody and you already having it within you. Because when you receive the information, it's like it took over your soul. It took you over, something within you activated, and it has been moving, animating itself ever since. There wasn't really a decision that had to be made. It was more of a stimulation that had to be fulfilled. So when you, and I'm speaking for myself, right? When I received this information, it changed me completely. I received this information 10 years ago, a decade ago. And ever since then, I've been completely renewed spiritually, mentally, physically. Could I say that I made that decision to place myself in particular situations so that information would be given to me? After the fact, yes. It's clearly documented on the channel. But initially, I had no comprehension of metaphysics, quantum physics, so on and so forth, alchemy, hermeticism, seven universal laws, so on and so forth. Once I gained understanding of these concepts, that's when things started to make more sense. I honestly felt this is a lifestyle that has always existed, and I have always existed, just like you have always existed, and it was only natural for these things to merge back together. That's how I feel. It's a natural progression. So anyone who is fighting it, anyone who is neglectful of it, anyone who does not take this seriously, like it's life or death, not a fad, not a trend, then you can clearly know who's who. But this is also what I'm saying here. It's not for us to go around seeking people to help or to befriend. This is not to be 420 friendly with people. And I'm doing my best to say civilized right now. I'm doing my best to say civilized. Because within, dealing with this every day from someone who has the magic eyes, who earned the magic eyes, who can see clearly with the magic eyes, it's very frustrating to see those who are asleep, purposefully sleep, because they cannot face the reality, which is very harsh, especially in the Americas, but all over the world as a whole. This is a very harsh reality. Information, science, technology, none of this makes life easier. It makes it more heavy. It makes a greater burden to navigate this life when you have to take an alternative route. When you're not satisfied with what is given to you, so you have to create that for yourself. And in creating that path for yourself, trial and error is unbelievable when you have to figure things out on your own from an alternative position. I'm pretty sure anyone who has been faced with poverty, consciousness, or the reality knows exactly what I mean, where there isn't a straight path for you to walk down. There's many twists and turns. And because there's many twists and turns, you have to go through a period of absolute hardship to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. That also requires you to read a lot of information. Because how would you know what works or what doesn't work if you have no knowledge of it? So you have to get the knowledge, put that knowledge to the test. Then from those tests, you have an intricate personal understanding or insight of what exactly you are dealing with. And from that personal insight, that develops your lifestyle. And when your lifestyle is developed, that's what empowers you to refine it. What do I mean by that? Power has to be defined. Power in this raw form will destroy everything. Just imagine something like the Hawk, who once the Hawk gets angry, although he has super strength, it's not that easy to control. This is what I mean. Once we come to the realization of how much power we truly have, it can destroy you if misused. So you must learn how to refine the power that you have become aware of from within. And once that power has become refined, only then can you see it for what it really is, in the sense of how you can apply this power in real time and create a life for yourself physically and alternatively, where you didn't take the new path or the path that was given to you. You created your own. But that comes after you refine your power. And once you refine your power and you can properly see how to implement that power physically, that's when your God consciousness begins to awaken. When you don't have any more physical problems. So if you're constantly living week by week, paycheck to paycheck, month by month, like every day is just a challenge. Every day is you trying to figure out how to make these things meet. If your mind is occupied by this, there's no way for you to develop an alchemical mentality because you're fixated on how to get to the next day or to the next week, to the next month. Now, yes, we all have bills, but they don't have to overtake us. They don't have to control or configure how you feel about self and the world. For most people, this is not the case. They get trapped into the bindings of what it means to be in a society that doesn't truly care about them like you would think. So, when you learn how to navigate this world alternatively, then your God consciousness begins to awaken because you are living the lifestyle that is right and exact, alternative lifestyle that you created for yourself. Then, when that God consciousness begins to awaken, then you have the power to build or destroy, but not physically. Now we're talking about the spiritual plane, that astral plane. Now we're talking about quantum physics. Now we're talking about how thoughts become things. All this new thought, new age information. That's only when this information is applied. Only when you get to the seventh degree does all this spiritual information apply to anybody. Because what is you knowing thoughts become things if you don't understand that process exactly from A to understand that process? It doesn't work because you must understand science, you must understand mathematics. This is why in my channel you see many different phases. I'm not just talking about the same thing every single time. I go all the way to hell, then take you all the way back to heaven. You see me struggle then you see me come out of it. I do it as an example to show and prove who and what we are, not who I am, who and what we are, and what we're capable of doing against any type of situations. Because when you have the God consciousness, life is different for you. Because again, you can build or destroy astrally, quantumly. You know how to move your mind more than you move your hands. Your mind starts to replace your hands. Your conversation begins to replace your hands. So now it's not about, well, can I work more hours to get more money? Now it becomes, how can I talk my way into or out of any situation? Your hands really, do what hands do instead of we're trying to use our hands to solve all of life's problems. So, last degree, once you have the ability to build or destroy psychically, we'll just say psychically, right? Not trying to confuse anyone, psychically, then you manifest. That's when manifestation truly takes place. The ninth degree. So if you're trying to do this on the first, second, or third degree, and again, for those who don't understand the lingo, like, what do I mean by the first degree? What do I mean by God? What do I mean by all this? It's not for you. It's not for you. At this point, there's no need for me to speak. Let me. There's no need for me to speak as if I'm speaking to people who don't know what I'm talking about. I don't need to speak as if I'm speaking to people like who's still trying to figure things out. I feel I do an injustice by not supplying game for those who are already with the shits, as opposed of I'm trying to teach people who don't know what I'm speaking about. That's why I have 500 videos. You can go back and do your research. So when you watch the recent videos and things become more complex, you see the evolution, which is my goal. So once we arrive at 2020, I'm going to be speaking in so many different ways that if you have not did or done your research, if you have not put this game into proper context, it's just not going to make any sense to you. And so be it, because this is only for those who actually have the desire to do this. And if you don't have the desire, you know, most of the time you probably don't see me anyway. I've studied this. So let me say this before we check out. Because again, I don't want to be on here too long. I have dedicated the last years of my life doing alternative research. So while everyone else is building their reality, starting families, building homes, owning property, doing all these things, I decided, let me discover the true secrets of reality. I understand that the material plane is the beginning, not the end. So for me to direct my entire focus on the material plane as if that's the end all be all, it doesn't do anything for me. For someone else who has no concern with the secrets of nature, then it doesn't apply to them. So there's no need to even mention them. But for those like me, we understand it's not enough to be physically successful. It's not enough because there's many more dimensions. You're not done when you can pay your bills, when you can get to point A to point B. It's kind of just starting. Honestly, you need your physicality to be on point to truly go into these studies. As I said earlier, it's hard to dedicate yourself fully into these studies when you're worried about the day-to-day things, the bills and all these things. It's hard for you to surrender yourself to the law when you have not surrendered yourself to the law, if y'all can repeat what I'm saying. It's hard for you to surrender to the law when you have not surrendered to the law. Because if you have not surrendered to the law, that's what creates you not submitting to the law. What do I mean by the law? You can call the law whatever you want to call it. Some people call it God. Some people call it the supreme intelligence, the infinite intelligence. Whatever created the mathematical sequences of when this chemical or this element comes into contact with this element, it creates a certain response. Whoever laid down that format. So when we look at life and when we see life, that's a blueprint. Whoever laid down that blueprint so that seeds turn into trees and plants and herbs, so on and so forth. Whoever laid down that blueprint, whatever you want to call it, fine. Whatever laid down that blueprint laid down the blueprint for us. So the blueprint laid down for us is the exact opposite of the world we live in today. We don't live in a world that's guided by the intuitive elements of nature, because nature can communicate with us and we can communicate with nature. That includes animals, that includes insects, that includes pets, so on and so forth. So most people have no idea how to do any of these things. Why? Because we're always working. We got so much to do. We're just so busy doing whatever it is that we feel we're doing. Most of the time, people are trying to generate wealth. They're trying to make sure that they're good and their family is good. So, in the midst of generating this wealth, too much time to study. That's why a lot of people study in their later years in life. A lot of people get into these studies later on in life once they have everything set up so that they can just fully dedicate themselves to their studies without interruption. And when you are younger, it's a lot harder to do this because you're still trying to figure out life, as opposed of someone who has already figured out life in the sense of what works for them. Because obviously, when I say figure out life, that applies differently to everybody. Because we all have a different path. We all are equipped differently to handle situations. You can call it the zodiac signs, so on and so forth. Depending on your elemental forces, will determine how you react to stimulation outside of self and within self, how you deal with your issues. What most people don't understand is when you undergo this science, it teaches you all these things at the same time because alchemy is the royal art, Royal, royal. So I know I'm speaking through this scarf, so my words may not come out as clearly. Nonetheless, alchemy teaches you how to do all things versus this world, you have to learn everything separately. You got to take a science class. You have to take a mathematics class. You have to take all different things at different times. That's how this world is set up. You learn everything separately. But the real reality is you learn everything at the same time because you understand correspondence. You understand that everything links to everything else. You understand how to link things together. So you can link science and mathematics. You can link linguistics. You can link business. You can link these things instead of learning all these things separately. Because when you learn all these things separately, now you got to figure out how to piece it all together. So either way, you still have to figure out how to piece these things together. Either way, whether you go the traditional route or the untraditional route. So therefore, the law governs all things, as the homie just said, right? So if the law governs all things, are you not a part of that law? If man is God, if mind is God, then that means that you are an extension of the law. And because you are an extension of the law, that means that you have to be in accordance with the law. Because if you are not in accordance with the law, then you're going to end up not understanding your purpose here because it's not going to make any sense. This is why it's absolutely necessary to get in tune with who and what you are. It's so easy to get distracted by life. Life is interesting. I understand. I understand. I'm probably gonna walk outside right now and see some beautiful woman that like, oh man, I should probably look over there. But then you like, I got other things to do right now. This is what I mean. I go through it, as anybody does, because the world is interesting. Life is interesting. Neglect it. Become one with it. Understand that there's a connection there. There's a connection between you being attracted to somebody and you not being attracted to somebody. That makes a difference. That matters. That will determine what happens depending on the chemistry. As we just said, what is chemistry? Chemical reactions. So when you have a sexual attraction or any type of attraction towards somebody, that is a chemical reaction going off in your body and maybe their body as well if they feel the same towards you. So it's a daily thing. They call copulation or generating the real force for those who understand that lingo. Intercourse is called copulation. Copulation is generating energy. So when you have a sexual attraction towards a person, that person, like it creates a field within your body that allows healing to take place, as they call sexual healing, so on and so forth, right? That's getting more into tantra. But the point is, that attraction that we feel, people, places, and things, whatever. Some people are attracted to certain cities. Some people are attracted to certain types of people, whatever, animals. That's all magnetism. When you are attracted to something, you know that there's a law behind that. The law behind that is called magnetism. Magnetism is what's responsible for the solar system and the planets revolving around each other. That's the nature of magnetism. So when we have this concept in our head of planets revolving around, of course, you got the flat Earth. But for those who understand the standard definition of planets revolving around the sun, that's magnetism. Magnetism causes things to whirl like that. It may appear to be going in a circle, but it's really spiraling. It's a spiral. Again, magnetism creates those dynamics. Solar systems, galaxies, universes. That's all magnetism. So when you understand magnetism, you understand why you're drawn to a certain person or a certain thing.